Welcome, everyone. I'm Joe Galvin, Chief Research Officer here at Vistage Worldwide, and I'm happy to host the latest webinar in our Peak Performer webinar series. This series is designed to support your leadership climb by bringing the most trusted experts to the Vistage community. Experts who provide exceptional insight and best practices, helping you navigate new challenges and possibilities. Today's topic is strategic pricing. Our latest research report, Decision Factors 2021, looks at 5 key external decision factors CEOs need to consider as they make decisions throughout the balance of this year and into next. The first is how big to bet. With the economy rising, headwinds in the way, and interest rates low, how big do you bet? How to hybrid the new hybrid office environment. How to connect to the connected customer. How to manage the rising cost of everything, and how to accelerate digital transformation. Today, we're going to focus on how to manage the rising cost of everything. Our data shows that inflation is impacting our community with 70% with higher costs for labor, increased prices for vendors. Prices are rising everywhere for everyone. And the challenge it creates is the rising cost of everything. We see that wages, for example, in our next chart, shows how organizations, in order to compete for talent, with 73% of our community increasing headcount in the year ahead, we have to increase wages, raising both the cost for new hires, but also the cost for our existing employees. Supply chain in our next chart shows how it's affecting not just our import-export, our manufacturers, but all of us, as we find the goods availability is simply not there. With $4 trillion plus in government spending, pent-up consumer demand, and now the increased rates of vaccination, we're all spending more, acquiring more. And as we learned in Econ 101, when supply is low and demand is high, prices are going to rise, which is what our next chart shows. That's 31%. Now, this is compared from Q4 to Q3. 31% will be increasing prices in the year ahead. Why? Because everything around us is raising prices. And that's why we've invited Casey Brown to join us. Casey Brown is featured in our report, but she is also a Vistage speaker, a president of Boost Profits, and a self-avowed pricing geek who's going to share her perspectives, her strategy, and her insights on how to create an effective pricing strategy, not just to raise prices, but to capitalize on this opportunity for your benefit. As president of Boost Profits, a firm that helps companies generate more sales at higher prices for improved profits, Casey has more than 2 decades of experience. She's pioneered innovative pricing content and leads efforts to coach and trains teams to drive culture change and dramatic sustainable results. Casey, we are so excited to have you here, and the content you have to share is so important to our community because everyone is dealing with the rising cost of everything. I want to thank you for being here and look forward to what you have to say and what you have to share with our community. Thank you, Casey.
Thanks, Joe. I really am excited to be here to share what we've seen and learned over decades, but especially what we know is going on and facing a lot of Vistage member companies. And so let's dive right into it. So first is I just want to kind of share a little bit about what we're going to talk about, just so everyone has a little bit of a roadmap of where we're going. So the plan of what we're going to talk about, what everyone's facing, what's happening to you, what you're experiencing regarding costs and other disruptions, interruptions in your business, what you're doing about it based on the kinds of conversations we're having with clients, what we're seeing happening, and the way that companies are responding, and what we would recommend you do about it that you might not be doing or not doing consistently or as strategically as maybe you could. So we'll give some suggestions. So that's where we're going to talk about. And just so you understand my secret agenda behind the plan, the whole purpose is to help you make more money. So if that's a goal that you can align behind, then I think we'll have a good hour together. So with that, let's start out with what's happening. What are you experiencing? And Joe teed it up very well with the backdrop of the problems facing you. But it's really, it's a lot of complexity. And it's a lot of challenges. It's a maze in your world for all the reasons that Joe outlined. Pent-up demand is unleashing. And Joe mentioned the consumer demand, but we're seeing this on the business side too. A lot of Vistage member companies are B2B and B2G, and a lot of projects and demand that was on hold for a year plus are starting to unlock, and we're seeing customer wallets open up, and that's causing a lot of pent up demand to unfold and release. Most of our client industries are going gangbusters, and suddenly sales are going through the roof. Alongside that, then you've got all these costs that are going crazy: costs of infrastructure, energy, raw materials, components, certainly labor. And it's not just that the costs are higher, that's part of it, but it's also that there are all these interruptions and difficulty procuring the products and the labor and the equipment. And so you're spending more time trying to get it done and trying to get it for your customers. So those costs are challenging you. And you're spending more of your energy trying to get it accomplished. And then finally, the number one thing I'm hearing from every business leader that I talk to is people. I need more people. I need of every type. We're talking about frontline, unskilled labor to skilled labor to trades to knowledge workers. Every aspect of the economy is being throttled in some case by the need for more talent, and it is more expensive. So those are the things that you already know you're dealing with. So what are you doing about it? What are we hearing from clients and business owners that they are doing to respond to these challenges? Well, because of all the demand and all the sales, the surge in sales finally after a lot of that got locked down in COVID, many people are doing everything they can to keep up with that. And what we see is a lot of companies, a lot of industries are already doing this at higher prices than they did pre-COVID, pre-recession, because they've had to. Many are seeing this rise in costs, this sea of higher costs, and they're taking higher prices to their customers. And so may think to themselves, Casey, I'm already taking your advice. Well, I would argue maybe not, because your price increases may not be covering all the cost increases that you've seen, or if they are, they're not going to cover the cost increases that you're going to see over the next 6, 12, 18, and 24 months, because we're not going to see a slowdown in some of the problems that you're experiencing. Labor's not going to ease up as a challenge for you. The war for talent isn't going to be won in the next few months. And I believe that the reason for price increases shouldn't just depend on what's going on with your costs. The basis of your value isn't just the cost of your inputs. So you're busy trying to keep up with all the sales growth that you're experiencing. You're very busy trying to make sure you can execute for customers, which has gotten more challenging for all the reasons we just described. It's harder to get material and people and serve your customers. So it's taking more time and effort, and it's happening a lot of times at thinner margins. There's margin compression because of those costs. So you're very busy trying to sell more and then trying to serve that demand, sell and deliver and sell and deliver. And it's costing a lot more work than ever before, because of all the reasons that Joe described in his introduction and that we've been talking about here. So my experience, and this is frankly more true of best in class and better in class companies like Vistage companies than maybe any other kind of company out there. You're on a hamster wheel of sell, go win sales, go win business, go get more business from your existing customers, go win new customers, and then make sure we deliver it with excellence. Go be flawless in our execution. Go make sure our customers aren't let down, which is harder because it isn't a piece of cake to deliver quality and excellence like it might have been for a best-in-class company 2 years ago. It's harder to get that done today. So we are in a hamster wheel of sell and deliver, sell and deliver, sell and deliver. And it's hard to get that done. You're spending a lot of time, and you're excellent at doing it, even in this very challenging environment. But how much time are you spending? How much energy are you spending making sure that you're being very surgical and strategic about your pricing decisions in that process? Now, you're certainly deciding as you bid on a new project, what margin should go on it, or you have a new customer opportunity, you're making pricing decisions around that, or you're launching a new SKU. That's part of that hamster process. Margins and pricing are part of that. But are you being as surgical and strategic as you could be? In my experience, sell, and execute and manage costs and be efficient. This has 100% of our focus, and somehow this has 100% of our focus. And being as strategic and careful and thoughtful about pricing gets the least amount of our attention. And so what I would like to ask you to choose for yourself is be a well-paid hamster. Go be a hamster. Sure. Make sure you sell a lot. Make sure you're going to deliver with excellence for your customers, but don't be a worn out, bedraggled, skinny hamster. Get paid well for it. And this may not resonate for you. You may think to yourself, we're spending a lot of time thinking about pricing and margins. This is something we think a lot about. Well, fair enough, but engage with me, if you will, in a thought exercise. Remember, it's Friday, so think over this week. Think over this week so far and remember what you've done. You know how much, hang on one second. I want to cover one other thing first. Pricing, we know that, this is the business leaders, how big of an impact pricing has. It's the biggest impact you've got. There's no greater impact on the profitability than pricing. For a company with a 20% gross margin and a 5% bottom line, 1% change in price, if we are able to get a 1% price improvement, that lifts our profitability, our bottom line, by 20%. If we were to go get 1% more in sales growth, that only, or cut our cost by 1%, that drives a 16% change to bottom line. And if we grow sales, it drives 4% to our bottom line. Now, I'm not saying don't manage costs and be efficient and be excellent. I'm not saying don't grow sales and sell more. Do both of those things. But somehow each of these are already getting 100% of your focus and attention. Just give a little bit more of your time and focus to making sure you're a well-paid hamster, to making sure you're getting paid well for the excellence you already deliver. Give it a little more time and attention and focus. Give it a seat at the table. We've made our peace that you're going to focus on sales volume. That will always have the throne, but pull up a stool for pricing. So back to this thought exercise. I jumped the gun because I get very excited. Joe knows I can't stop talking about this topic. I jumped ahead in my talk a little bit because I got excited. But think about this week so far. Think about how much time and effort and thought and worry and stress and energy you have spent on sales, on generating sales, on focusing on customers, on the sales piece of your business. How much time in your day, how much time in your week, what percentage of your week you focus on this? Pick up a pen, write it down, or think about it, contemplate it. Now, think about what percentage of your week, or how many hours of your day, or how many hours of your week you spend thinking about focusing on executing on the operational side of the business, on making sure your customers get the products that they bought from you or the services that they engaged from you. And those are right, they're on time, they're correct, that they meet the spec, that you get it done. Think about that. So how much time do you spend selling? How much time do you spend delivering? Now think about this week so far and how many hours a day, what percentage of your week you have spent being surgical and strategic in price management, being very careful, very thoughtful. Customer, product, strategy, come up out of the woods, look around, make sure you're still pointing at the mountain. Are we taking every opportunity to maximize our profitability through effective price management? For many of you on this webinar, my guess is we're spending 100% of our time on generating demand, 100% of our time on executing, and 2% of our time being as strategic as we could be about pricing. At least that's my experience addressing 250 or so Vistage groups by now. when I ask if they're talking about sales and meeting about it, if they're talking about operations and costs and efficiency and meeting about it, and if they're talking about strategic pricing and meeting about it, and no hands go up. So my suggestion is that this gets an hour of your week more than it's getting today. If you're spending 0 hours on it, spend 1. If you're spending 2 hours on it, spend 3. There is not 1 hour you can spend on anything else in your business that could generate the kinds of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars of benefit that pricing can. And I understand that as a best-in-class company, you aren't going to stop making sure you serve customers with excellence. That's always going to be who you are. But you are encountering the following reality that I would like to have you contemplate. Are you perfectly fine with mediocre margins because you're so busy ensuring flawless customer results to bother getting paid well to deliver it? Because my experience, despite the fact that you are best in class, and you may be a very profitable company today, and you may already experience a price premium in your marketplace, is that your attention, the tyranny of the urgent in your business is 1,000% spent on selling and selling and selling and volume and volume and volume, and on execution and on cost management and making sure we get personnel and all these things around execution. And we're not focused on asking for enough for the excellence that we provide. And your margins are getting compressed. And maybe you feel a little bit like a bedraggled, tired, hungry, skinny hamster. And it's because you're not spending enough time on this. So what do we do about it? Where do we go from here? You don't want to be a skinny hamster anymore. What should you do? Well, raise prices. Raise them more. Maybe you did it. Raise them again. Raise them higher percentage than you think you should. Do it faster. Whatever your plans are around this, revise them. Call a late afternoon meeting this afternoon and say, what can we do to accelerate and increase our game plans around pricing? Because everybody in the world, all of your customers, whether you sell to a business, a government agency, a nonprofit, a consumer, every customer out there is becoming completely numb to price increases. Doesn't mean they're happy to take them. Doesn't mean they love them. Nobody loves price increases ever. Everybody always wants everything to be free. But the entire world on everything, and you heard this in Joe's introduction, there is an enormous groundswell across industries, every kind of thing, product, services, every industry in the world. This is happening. You can be part of the wave. Do not be behind the wave. Be part of the wave. Your customers have heard it from 50 other vendors. They're passing their prices along to their customers if they're businesses. It's the time. Do it now. And this came from the decision factor report that Joe cited, that 74% of CEOs in Q3 said they were raising prices. And I want to know what the heck is going on with the other 26% of you. Don't just wait for costs to go up to raise prices. Do it. Do it now. You are valuable. You are worth it. You are best in class. Take a hard look at what your plans are. There is an opportunity here. Now, say you buy into what I'm telling you. We want to do this. We have an opportunity to get better at this. We want to be more effective in general around pricing, and we want to be more effective with price increases. So what do? Well, we only have 40 minutes. I wish we had 40 years, but in a very short period of time, I can teach you only a couple of things. And I would ask you to look at these things. Be very intentional about price. Be very strategic about price, and be very supportive of your team. So let's dive in a little bit. Be intentional. What does this mean? Don't shut up about it. Do not shut up about pricing. Like, talk about it, have meetings about it, have strategic pricing meetings. When I ask in a Vistage group, when I'm presenting to a CEO audience or in a trade association or a conference somewhere, and I say, are you having sales meetings? And all the hands go up. And I say, if you're having operations or executions or cost meetings, and all the hands go up. And I say, are you having regular strategic pricing meetings? And no hands go up. Under the adage of what gets measured gets done, the very fact of shining a light on this will change behavior, which will change results. Throw yourselves a bone and have a strategic pricing meeting once a quarter. During the current inflationary environment, have one once a month. But talk about pricing, talk about it more. Don't shut up about it. Find have a lunch and learns, have peer teaching opportunities, have, role play sessions over pizza once in a while. Talk about it a lot more than you're talking about it today. And not just, we have a new customer opportunity, or what margin do we put on this project, in a more holistic organization-wide way. Give it a bigger seat at the table in the conversation. Number 2, find a pricing maniac. Find someone who is fired up on your team that loves this topic. Find your own little mini Casey Brown. Name a pricing champion. Give it somebody who's fired up to discuss this. Create a pricing committee. Somebody who meets on this to talk about pricing wins, or to talk about measurements, or to talk about pricing communication planning. Give somebody some ownership over this, which brings me to number 3. And this is slightly different. Many Vistage companies are also operating on EOS. And so you've got the accountability chart. Who's accountable for pricing? Who owns this? Whose job is it to make sure that we're driving this strategically? Doesn't mean you have to have a dedicated pricing resource on your team. Although the payback period for some organizations to name a dedicated resource wouldn't be years or months, it'd be days or weeks. There's a reason CPO is a title, Chief Pricing Officer is a thing, right? So give more attention, more time, more focus to pricing by giving this accountability to someone to own, separate from sales. So be intentional about it. Secondly, be strategic about it. So data beats fear. What do I mean by this? Most pricing decisions are made from fear. They're not made with data. So use data and analytical tools to make more effective pricing decisions that manage risk, that mitigate the amount of effort and energy you're putting into pricing. You can pilot price increase decisions. What segments of your customers, your products or services are least risky, or most sensitive, or least sensitive, and make a segmented price increase plan. But do this from a place of data, not from a place of fear. Secondly, one size fits all only fits the bully. Don't do a one size fits all price increase. Oh, we're doing 5% because our cost went up 5%, or we're doing 10% because our cost went up 5%. If you do one size fits all, you do an across the board price increase, it tends to be centered around the most price sensitive customers that you have. In other words, the biggest bullies, the squeakiest wheels, the vocal minority, the meanest, most price sensitive customers you have, set the limit on what you will price if you do one size fits all. So how do we get more granular in our approach to pricing? How do we create a more segmented approach that allows us to pick up the upside on those less sensitive customers, or those less sensitive products or services? So we have, I hear it a lot. I was with an audience yesterday, and someone said, well, we just raised all our rates of our labor by all our service techs by $3 an hour. I said, that's because the most price sensitive customers you have are willing to accept a price increase of $3 an hour. Who would have paid you $5 an hour more? Who would have paid you $6 an hour more? $8 an hour more? Do not let the most price sensitive customers you have drive the entire ship. The riches are in the niches. Get more granular. And number 3, plan for adoption. So what are your communication strategies for this? What is the segmentation strategy for this? What is the plan to support the team? How are you going to roll this out? What is the pilot and rollout strategy? How do you make sure you plan for success? So often there isn't much planning. We are very reactive, and all of a sudden we're shoving pricing out the door. The more we plan for this, the more strategic we are for this, the more successful we'll be, the more realization we will have. So really quickly on this topic of make a data-driven decision, not a fear-based decision, I'm going to use an example company just to make this very real. Let's talk about a manufacturing company with 20% gross margin, 5% bottom line, just to illustrate this concept. So let's say there's a conversation happening inside this organization, some hand-wringing, some fear, some nervousness. Oh my gosh, I'm nervous that we'll lose a bunch of customers if we raise prices right now. Well, a 5% price increase for a company with this kind of financial picture would double the profitability of this organization. It would double the profitability of this organization. Double, 100%. If this is not an exciting number to you, you might want to go refill your coffee because the early afternoon slump is kicking in. If you lost some sales volume, even with a 10% sales volume loss, you're still 50% more profitable, 50% more profit to the bottom line, even with a 10% loss. I think it's helpful to bound the risk, bound the fear, say, hey, if the worst happened, like how much volume would I have to lose just to break even? And the goal is we're not saying, hey, it's fine to lose sales volume. Don't worry about that. That's not the goal. We can be very surgical and strategic. That's the benefit of the segmented approach. But if I'm surgical and strategic about this and I'm wrong, let's say the worst happened if I lost volume, what would this look like? And that can give you the confidence to proceed. So I could lose up to 20% of the sales volume and still break even. Now, the reality is because of everything that Joe described at the beginning, because it's harder to get material, it's harder to ship it, it's harder to get the people to help you serve it, it's harder to do everything. Some of you could honestly stand to lose some of your worst customers, and it would be good for you. It might be time for them to become alumni of the organization. But we won't lose the customers. We fear we will, but we won't. They're going to stick around and keep buying, and you're going to be a lot more profitable. But do the math. Make sure you're making a data-driven decision, not a fear-driven decision. There's a lot of decisions we've got to come to when we make a pricing decision. When should we do it? And my answer to you is now. But also consider when your customers are least sensitive. They tend to be far less price sensitive when they're busy. So don't do a price increase in the middle of don't do a January 1st price increase if your customer's busy season is in the summer. How much price increase are you going after? Are you doing it in a segmented fashion? When and how will you communicate it? Tend to be the case that we over communicate price increases. We shove pricing in people's faces. We tell them all the things about pricing and we make it a very big deal when otherwise they wouldn't notice. I went and got a haircut yesterday, and the guy who cuts my hair, I think he does a great job. I'm pretty sure he does, doesn't he? And he said, I'm thinking about, and he knows I do pricing and I'm always giving him pricing advice. And so I'm thinking, I maybe want to increase rates. I've only, I haven't raised them in a couple of years. I said, yeah. I said, but your costs are going up. Yeah. Rent's up. This is up. That's up. So yeah, I think it's time. What are you thinking about raising them? And he told me, and I said, double that, and he says, well, do I need to announce it? I said, no, you don't need to announce it. I have no idea what I pay for a haircut here. I literally have no idea. I come in, you cut my hair, I put my credit card in the thing, I give you a tip and I leave and I don't know what it is. And I won't know when you increase it. And I would bet, do you agree with me that 80% or more of your customers are just like me? He said, yeah, I think so. I said, then why would you tell them? So for many folks on the call, this isn't appropriate. You can't just sneak it by and see what happens. For some of you can, because, Amazon doesn't let me know that the earbuds I bought 3 years ago are now $2 more. Like, where are you letting people know that you don't have to? Where are you letting people know with some big sit down meeting or a letter or an involved discussion that all you have to do is put a little notice on the website? We tend to over communicate, and that creates sensitivity. We also tend to put a lot of emphasis on the role of cost, a lot of emphasis on the role of cost as the justification for pricing. But this bothers me a great deal. I don't think we shouldn't talk about cost as a part of pricing, but Joe knows this. He's heard me make this analogy before. There's a picture of the Sistine Chapel, painted, of course, by Michelangelo. He was paid 3,000 ducats to paint the Sistine Chapel, which is in today's dollars approximately $500,000, a nice sum. It had nothing to do with the cost of paint. Did not matter what paint cost. Had nothing to do with the cost of the inputs. So do not tie the cost, your price increases and the pricing increase communications you give to your customers exclusively to cost increases. It completely eliminates the role of your value in your customer's eyes, even in your own communications. So while you may cite the role of cost, don't do that exclusively. Always tie back to the value that you create, the role you play in creating value for your customers. It's not just about the cost of the inputs that relates to the value that you create for your customers. Now, why are we not as effective sometimes in rolling out price increases to our customers? What are the main obstacles? Sometimes the external obstacles feel like the main reason we don't get this done. That's what I hear from sales teams, that we think it's about the competitive pressure or customers objecting or refusing to accept price increases. But what we find to boost profits is a lot of times there are internal threats. It's our fear about volume loss, or we decide from fear rather than data, or we don't decide at all. We get wrapped up in the hamster wheel and pricing's left on autopilot. And sometimes our sales team can be scared of damaging relationships or taking hits to commission. And we aren't feeling very prepared or confident to pass along the price increase. You know, they're lacking the skills or the messaging or the support to be effective. We do a lot of deciding from fear. So the reality is that most pricing decisions are made from fear rather than from confidence in our experience. And most people are selling and pricing, not necessarily to win, but instead not to lose. We're pricing not to lose rather than pricing to win. Now, this is true all the time. This isn't just a role, a reality we see when people are trying to roll out price increases. That's true all the time. But then when we try to raise prices, fear turns to panic. And what we know from brain science is when we're operating from a place of fear, the amygdala is in charge. The amygdala runs the show when we're afraid. And this is the primitive part of our brain. This is not the rational, nuanced data center. That's the neocortex. So we can't let the amygdala run the show because it knows how to freeze, flee, or fight. Not a good formula for making more money with pricing. So we've got to get the neocortex back in the game and not decide from fear. If we add to that a little more mindset reality, that some data we know about salespeople from over 670,000 salespeople that have been assessed by the Objective Management Group, 75% of them need approval more than they need to close business. They're so worried about what the customer or prospect thinks that that gets in their road of closing business, of passing along a price increase, of asking better questions. They aren't comfortable talking about money. Pretty clear to see why that could be an obstacle in passing along a price increase. They understand when the prospect wants to comparison shop. Makes sense to them. Maybe they want a comparison shop when they buy. And this is the real shocker to me. 82% believe when their customers tell them that the other guy's cheaper, or no one else is raising prices right now, or here's a competitive quote you need to match. If there's an old joke, how do you know a prospect is lying? Their lips are moving, right? So we've got to be careful what we believe from our customers because they aren't telling us the truth about pricing. But some of these mindset limiters that our salespeople hold are further impacting their ability to be successful with rolling out price increases. So this gets me to my last step. We said be intentional, be strategic, and be supportive. Because you can have a great strategy. You can have the world's best strategy. Your sales team will still march right around it and discount in the face of those fears and those mindset limiters if they're not supported in the right ways. So what does this mean? What do I mean by be supportive? You can't just tell them to do it. You can't just hand them a letter and say, here, go tell the customer the prices are going up. Or you can, but you may be struggling to realize the full effectiveness of that action. So we've got to do these following things. Coach to behaviors. What we see a lot with sales managers is we're coaching to results. Tell me about your pipeline. Tell me how many deals are going to close this week. Who you're visiting, what meetings are happening. Tell me about the price increase results. What happened here. We're having very results-oriented coaching conversations if we're having them, not necessarily coaching to behaviors. So this means things like really helping them develop their skills, helping uncover some of those mindset limiters, helping them develop skills and mindset that are supportive of sales success, which are things like helping them plan for that conversation, helping them get in the right mindset, develop the language, and support them in their development around the behavior and better questions and uncovering the mindset limiters that are stopping them. Second is helping them with the messaging. Sometimes people don't know what to say around a price increase. They don't know how to communicate that, especially in unprecedented times like global pandemic. There are things happening in our current economic climate, our current economic environment that they've never had to communicate before. And if you have 20 people on your sales team, do you want 20 people independently deriving a message, making it up out there dealing with price objections? I think the answer is you don't, because no matter how strong your team is, you do not have 20 people equally gifted in the arts of value message creation. We just don't all have the same competency with that. So instead of letting everybody go out there and make it up on their own, help develop the message, help with the story. Don't let everybody struggle and figure it out on their own. I'm a fan of the idea of a price objection FAQ doc. Like, what are the best talking points and the best questions to ask in the face of some of the pressure that they're commonly hearing today, that they may not have heard a year ago or 2 years ago, because there's new things happening right now. Don't make them all figure it out on their own. Met several hundred Vistage members, probably several thousand by now. And my experience, having had exposure to a lot of Vistage companies, is that you've got the concept of messaging down pat. You got great websites, you have great pitch decks, you have great catalogs, you have great showrooms, you are great at telling your story. You've seen 20 speakers come and talk to you about telling your story. You understand the concept of messaging, and you've invested dollars and hours in doing so in various areas of your business. But how many hours and dollars have you invested in price objection messaging? How many hours and dollars have you invested in price objection messaging? The answer for most businesses is exactly zero. You've let every single person on your team figure it out on their own. And you hope they're doing a good job. And some of them are, but some folks are really struggling. Or some of them were doing a pretty good job 2 years ago, but the current environment has got them upside down. So help them. Help them with better messaging. Help them with the story. Help them with the questions. And this goes back to coaching to behavior. We can't just hand them the script. Because of the reasons we talked about on the former slide with their difficulty discussing money or their need for approval, we can't just hand them the script. We also have to do number 3, which is we have to help them get ready. We have to do a lot of work with them around pre-call planning and role play. I wrote the word play, not role play, because salespeople are allergic to role play. So we don't call it role play. We're just going to pre-brief. let me just talk me through this. So, what are the goals that they have for a discussion? They're going to go have a conversation with a customer about a price increase. What are the goals for that conversation? What questions are you going to ask? What objections do you think you might hear? And then you talk it through, let's discuss this. So talk me through what you might say if the customer says this is outside their budget. Do a little role play. Don't call it role play. Don't tell them you're going to role play. Just say, hey, let's just talk this through. What are you going to say when they do that? And then when they come back and tell you what happened, do a little debrief. How'd the budget conversation go? What'd they say? What'd you say? How'd it go? Coach them through that. Help them get better. Coach to behaviors, not just to results. So we coach the behaviors, we help with the story, we do planning for the calls, for the discussions, for the meetings they're going to have, and we do the role play. Now, we have a downloadable tool that everyone on this meeting is welcome to. It's 6-7 pages. It's got a recommended process for managing price objections. I think 30 or more than 30 proven responses and questions, and some fillable sheets for you to fill out your best questions and responses for objections you face. So the link is there, a QR code is there. So feel free to grab that. And with that, I will just put up my contact information there. I'm also in my vistage.com, so you can find me there if anybody has any follow-up questions or wants to reach out for any more information. And I am going to take the slide down and open it up for any questions.
Well, Casey, thank you. I can see how this could easily make for not just a 3-hour group session, but for a multiple day seminar. You covered so much ground and so many topics. We had a number of questions come in, but I've got to ask my own questions first because you got me thinking about so many different things. We're in this inflationary environment. And as you said, customers have become numb to price increase. We all have. I mean, your bills come in at home and this is up and that's up. And so you say, okay, whatever. Inflation is with us today. Our economic experts vacillated on whether it's going to moderate next year, it's going to last through 23, it's going to be with us forever. Given that scenario of uncertainty, how often do I increase my prices? Do I do one big dump at a time when you said when they're very busy? Do I plan and say, okay, I'm going to anticipate this, so on a quarterly or twice a year basis? Can you give us a framework to think about how to sequence price increases as we ride this inflationary cycle?
Sure. Well, I am a consultant, so of course the answer is it depends. It's printed right on my business card. I'm allowed to say that. No, it does depend, and that's the short answer. The slightly longer answer is it depends on a few factors. Things like a little bit about the length of the sales cycle of your industry and what's happening with things like cost factors, with things like what's happening in the competitive environment. I would say the medium length answer is as fast as you can, and as often as you can, as high as you can. It is, there are industries where there's sort of a habit, a trend of like, it's annual price increase time, right? Or, we only do it when our costs go up. I would encourage in general to ask the folks on the call to, and you to, as you brought this question up, to interrogate your habits or your assumptions about like, this is the way it always works, or this is the way this has to be, or this is the way my industry operates. I would say throw the running rules out the door. Quarterly price increases, weekly price increases are not too much for some industries. For other industries, with very long sales cycles, sometimes it's, it could be something like every couple of years. I would say whatever your historical frequency has been, it's probably, in my opinion, based on what I see coming in the next 18, 24 months, at least probably double that frequency for the next couple of years. The thing you said about the, how much one big dump, what's that sequence look like? The embedded question in there is something along the lines of, is it better to take a series of small price increases or one big one at a time? Like what's better? What gets better results with customers? Again, the answer is it depends. The short answer is whatever reduces the sensitivity with customers. And I'll explain a little bit. Sometimes competitors do an annual increase or a quarterly increase of 3%, 3%, 3%, and you may not have increased prices by, at all for 5 years. Well, it's quite difficult now to go back and do a 40% increase at this point without sticking out like a sore thumb. So ideally, you would have done the same thing they've done all this time. Now it's hard to play catch up. I would say that try to catch up as much as you can, as quickly as you can, and recover from that. And then going forward, what is the amount of price that you can get as on the frequency you can get it that doesn't put you at a significant competitive disadvantage? So usually that means more frequent, slightly smaller amounts rather than some massive increase all at once, because that can create a lot of sticker shock with customers.
Yeah, when you talk about customers now, it's one thing if I have a renewable type product or a fulfillment type product, or I've got as you mentioned, sales cycle that goes 2 years or every 5 years, or maybe even longer than that. But just in a real simple sense, is it easier, faster, quicker to raise prices for new customers than to deal with some of the noise you'd mentioned from existing customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So that you bring up a great point, Joe, and it absolutely is easier to go raise prices on somebody that's never bought from you before than it often is for existing customers. And similarly, there are some folks that are participating in this call that don't necessarily have a customer base that buys from them over and over again. They may sell something once and then never sell something to that customer again, or not for a long time. And so they are much less beholden to this concern around how dynamic or static their pricing needs to be. And I would say you could raise your prices as often as the market and the value tell you you're able to. I would caution sometimes when we're working with clients on good pricing strategy, they tend to hold themselves back from a good strategic pricing decision because they're worried about the legacy customers and how they will react. And the wisdom of your question is, make a good pricing strategy as if you're essentially a blue ocean company, as if you are brand new and you're setting this thing up from scratch. What would your price be? And that'll allow you not to continue to populate your customer roles with customers that are buying too cheaply, right? Those guys will come in at the new right price, and then figure out a migration plan for your existing customer base to get them up to that new higher price over time. And that's where I think segmentation really comes into play, because you have some customers that are either way too low margin or very low risk. And you say, hey, let's go very aggressively there. You have other customers maybe at the other end of the spectrum that are a ton of your revenue, a ton of your margin, or are very, very sensitive, very risky. You might want to take a much more cautious approach to how aggressively you want to move the price there. And then other segments in the middle. And so a segmented price increase strategy is effective in that regard. And the most aggressive you may want to be is with brand new customers.
And that's to your point that one size fits all only fits one size, and that everyone is unique. You raised a point I wanted to ask as you talk about market forces. In our pricing strategy thinking, how important is it to understand and accommodate for competitors' pricing? And if my competitor raises their prices by 5 or 6%, do I now say, well, I'm going to go 7 or 8%? How does that play into that strategic decision making?
That's a fantastic question. Perfectly aligned with every other answer I gave. It also depends. And it largely depends on how similar or differentiated you are from your competitors. And so what I will tell you is that it tends to be the case that we more head trash between our ears. We think that we are limited by our competitors more than we are. And so, example, a client might say, hey, don't we need to understand where our competitors are priced before we can make a good pricing decision? I said, look, I'll save you some time. I'll save you $50,000 of a market research study. You go out and spend that money. It's going to come back and it's going to say some of them are more expensive than you and some of them are cheaper. What are you going to do about it? The reason I say that is because many folks on this call, maybe nearly all of them, are very differentiated, are best in class or better in class. So they are already a cut above in the marketplace. And so I would not have them be beholden or limited by what the competitors are doing. They're in a position to lead the market. Now, how much depends on if you sell something wildly differentiated, wildly unique, wildly special that no one else can even touch, or if you tend to operate on the more competitive and commoditized marketplaces. So you sell, tonnage steel or bulk chemicals or, copper or lumber. There are certain things that will still get squeezed. Now, even on that end, there are winners and losers. There are best-in-class companies that are able to earn a premium because they have better service, better availability, better quality. But the amount of premium that those best-in-class companies can earn at the more competitive and commoditized end of the spectrum varies. And I think those folks have to have a much better eye on what the competitors are doing than at the more differentiated end, where I would say it matters far less.
Thank you. You spoke a lot about courage, right? The courage to price, not the fear of losing, but the confidence to win. Yeah. For most CEOs, the voice that they hear is one of those bully customers who send them the email and, the angry email. And that's what they hear. That's what they see. Or it's the voice of their salespeople. And as a former salesperson, you go out and you come back and say, oh, the pricing's too hard, competitors too tough, customers are crying. How does a CEO get a real sense of what the impact of that pricing change is and whether it was too much, too little, or just right? The golden scenario, if you will.
It's a really tricky reality because what you're talking about is two different things. One is the negativity bias. So it's a psychological concept where we pay more attention to negative events than positive events. That's why we have to hear 20 compliments on the schoolyard to make up for one, schoolyard bully who says something mean about the way our hair looks or something, right? So we are conditioned as human beings. It's a psychological construct that we pay more attention to bullies. So we can do 20 deals. We can have 200 deals, go perfectly fine. We've raised the price. Nobody said a word. 3 customers come back and complain. And we say, our prices are too high. This price increase is a disaster. We lost 3 customers. Okay, but 200 customers accepted it and we're 20% more profitable because of it. And the ones that left, by the way, are the worst customers ever. So the negativity bias is at play. The other thing that's going on in the question you asked is that sometimes sales folks spend more energy negotiated internally than they do externally. They will work harder to convince the boss that we need to avoid, this customer should be exempt from the price increase, or these guys need a discount. And we sometimes think when we're sitting in the boss's chair, boy, I wish they could spend 10% of the energy they spend convincing me. If they spent 10% of that convincing the customer, we'd be rolling in the dough. So the answer to the question, how do we know the truth, is we test it. Right. The reality is what we see at Boost Profits is that there's far too much hand wringing and thinking about it and worrying about it. And we're darn sure we're going to lose all this volume. And then we go out and roll it out and then we don't lose any, or we lose 1/10 of what we thought. So you could spend 6 months trying to figure it out and worry about it, and you will have lost 6 months of increased profitability. So I would say, which is your lowest risk segment of customers or your lowest risk segment of products or services? Get out there and try it. This is where the analytical tools to help you segment your data a little bit and make some better decisions, and get out there and do it, especially now. 6 months from now, look, I believe we'll still be in this environment in 6 months, but if I'm wrong, you will have missed the boat. Don't be last. Do not be last when it comes to price increases. Be in the pack. Be first or be in the pack. Don't be last.
And as long as we're talking about salespeople and how salespeople function and think, how do you draw a connection between pricing and discounting? Right? It gets back to this concept of it's about value, but we know bad salespeople sell price and good salespeople sell value. How do you get your arms around where discounting fits into your pricing strategy?
Well, if you sell on price, you're not selling at all. You're taking orders. And so if you're reaching into your quiver of sales tools and the first tool you're pulling out is a discount, then it's because you either are limited in your skills and competencies to sell value, or you've got some of that mindset head trash stuff that I was talking about before. And so as a leader, as a coach, as a sales manager, it'd be helpful to understand what's going on for that person. A lot of times companies try to get around that by creating guardrails or rules or policies. And those are effective-ish. But usually what happens is then all of the deals start coming in right at the floor, right? Like if I say, as soon as you can only discount up to 15%, well, then 100% of the deals are coming in at 15%. So it doesn't really fix the problem unless you deal with the fundamental issues.
Okay. Is there a different approach when you talk about Fortune 1000 or Fortune 100 companies, for example? Amazon says or Walmart says we are not accepting price increases at this time. How do you deal with that?
Sell to someone else. No, I mean, I'm kind of kidding, but I mean, and when I say kind of, what I mean is it is, of course, in the best interest of any company who's got 30, 40, 50, 60, 70% of their customer volume coming from a Walmart or a General Motors or a GE to create a sales strategy, a go-to-market strategy that diversifies them away from those bullies, because the procurement environment there is not just painful. It is, of course, painful, but I actually think that they are designed in ways that actually work against the procuring organization. In other words, it's very hard to create a machine, a procurement machine in those large organizations that's that aggressive, that doesn't create a perversion in their strategy. So you end up incentivizing people to do things that actually work against their own good. And so if you're selling to those kind of organizations, like if their strategy ultimately is getting perverted inside their organization against their own good, it's hard to sell there and sell well. So the short answer is never let someone else's strategy drive you into bad strategy. You have to know your walk away point. You have to have a very clear discipline about what you are willing to do and what you aren't willing to do for a Walmart, for example, because they will chew you up, spit you out, and put you out of business. That's just reality. And so but I think that same thing applies no matter who your customer is. Have a very clear strategy, have very clear rules, have a very clear discipline. It just, the stakes are higher if a huge part of your business rests with some of those big bullies.
Well, Casey, I could ask you questions for the rest of the afternoon and into tomorrow. And I'm confident you could provide answers at least that long, if not longer. But we are at the top of the hour. So I'd like to say thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your insight, your judgment, your wisdom. It's been incredibly powerful. One of the things that I walked away with was your comment early on about how we spend so much time focused on operational execution and for so much time on our cost and on getting more customers, but we don't spend time thinking about pricing. And it's only now this inflation is forcing us to get into it. My hope is that people will not just embrace this during this inflationary period, but recognize how critical strategic pricing is and recognize it's all about value. It's never about money. It's always about value.
Yeah. The reality is the sellers are focused on price and we think the buyers are, but the buyers are always focused on value. We're the ones worried about price. They're worried about value.
It's always about value. So again, thank you so much for sharing your insights. As part of our Peak Performance series, we hope to have you back again in the near future so we can continue to learn. As a note to our attendees, we'll be sending a link to today's recording and slides in about 24 hours, so look out for that. For more insights around growth, please join us for our upcoming Growth Through Sales and Marketing Conference on November 30th, offered both in person in Dallas, Texas, and virtually. There's more information available at vistage.com/sales-market-growth. You can see it on the chart right here. A link can be found on your chat right now. We got 2 dynamic speakers. We got some great breakouts. I'm going to be there. I can't wait to learn in that environment and again, get back to face-to-face with folks. I also hope you can join us for more of our upcoming great webinars on November 5th. Experts from UBS will guide us on a look at how environmental, social, and corporate governance, AKA ESG, that's a term that's becoming more and more frequently used, ESG, about and how that positions impacts the company value and how to share that story to employees, customers, potential investors, and acquirers. UBS always brings great speakers and has some great insight on this. And then on November 12th, my friend Jolene Martinez from the Latino Leadership Institute will share insights on how to uncover bias, looking at how our brain functions, thinking tendencies, and bias in everyday life. This is going to be really insightful. I always learn when I engage with Joelle. You can register for those at vistage.com/webinar. That's vistage.com/webinar. So again, I want to thank you all for your time and attention. Cannot begin to thank Casey enough for not just her contribution to our Decision Factors report, which is available on the Vistage Research Center, but her thoughts, ideas, and concepts today. They were so strong. So again, thank you, Casey, very much. Thank you for listening in today. And I hope everyone is well and safe. And we'll look forward to seeing you again in our next webinar. Thank you very much.